Hey there. Hello. How do you do? My name is Harry Wetzel. Thanks for coming. It's the 80s, darling. Yes, it is. It is early April 1983, and you'll never guess who came into the store. Neil Sedaka. Yes, American songwriter, Grammy Award winner, singer, songwriter. He wrote Oh Carol. He wrote Calendar Girls. He wrote Breaking Up Is Hard to Do. He wrote Love Will Keep Us Together, later recorded by Captain and Neil. He's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, inductee in 1983, by the way, and everything. And he walks right into the store. And he walks right up to me. Now, he's super nice. And he just wants to get 6 bottles of white wine. And he pretty much knows what he wants to get, a mixed half a case of white wine. So, to be delivered. And so he's super friendly and he's super nice and super normal. And we make the order and I write everything down and I get all the information. And then I'm like, Mr. Sadaka, if I may. And he said, yes. And I said, I've always loved your music, but I have to tell you, my sister is a huge fan. And her birthday is coming up. And if you could do me the enormous favor of writing birthday greetings to my sister Susan from Neil Sedaka, I know that she would cherish that. And he said, give me the piece of paper. And I think, you, what a guy. So I got a piece of paper from the booze store with a little insignia down at the corner. And he wrote, to Susan, happy birthday, Neil Sedaka, 1983. Yes, what a guy. He said, is that good enough? And I says, she's going to cherish this, I guarantee it. He said, well, I said, so thank you very much. And that was the end. And like poof, like that, he was gone. So, I sent that off to my sister. She got it in time for her birthday and she was absolutely thrilled. All right, here's the thing. I've got a photograph of the Neil Sedaka letter, as it were, and we'll put that below in the comments, a link to that, or maybe the picture, if I can figure out how to load it thus. All right, now it's a little bit later in April. I'm fending off my depression, trying not to obsess over this job in Terre Haute that I really, 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 really want. And so I'm just going along, fending off my depression as best as I can. It's a little bit later in April, and I still haven't heard from Suzanne either way. And so you'll never guess who came into the store next. Yes, you'll never guess because you probably don't know who it is. You may have never heard of him. It is William M. Gaines, Bill Gaines, producer, publisher of EC comic books, EC Comics back in the 1950s, EC for Entertainment Comics. And he took the comic book business and turned it into the comic book industry because he got out a line of titles that became wildly popular, that like Tales from the Crypt, The Vault of Horror, The Haunt of Fear, Two-Fisted Tales, crime suspense stories, shock suspense stories, and weird science. Yes, all of these comic book titles became wildly popular, and across the land, all the kids were reading comic books. They got to be so popular that the grown-ups hated it and wanted to ban comic books because children were paying more attention to their comic books than to the useless collection of facts and figures we're trying to cram into their skulls so that we can crush, kill, and destroy critical thinking over the next couple of decades. Don't get me started on that topic. But they tried to ban comics, and Bill Gaines saw it as nothing but censorship, and he fought it, and he won. He fought against McCarthyism. This dude is a champion, is a titan in the publishing industry. And if all that wasn't enough, after that he turns around and starts publishing Mad Magazine. He's the founder and publisher of Mad Magazine. Yes. And here is what he looks like. Yes, and this is his biography written by one of his Mad Magazine company, and that's what he looks like. He looked like Karl Marx, you can see, with horn-rimmed glasses. Right. So this man, this imposing legend walks into the store. This publishing legend walks into the store, and he walks right up to me. And he's actually kind of shy. He comes up and he says, "May I please have a fifth of dry sack sherry, please?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." And so I turn right around because it's in the wall of liquor behind me, and I know right where it is. And I get a fifth of dry sack. It's a bottle of sherry, not my favorite. It's a little too sweet for me, but it's in a cute little burlap sack. The bottle's in a cute little burlap sack. And I put it on the counter in front of him, and I say, "Sir, is it you?" And he looks at me, and he kind of looks down. He sort of minces a little bit, and he said, "Yeah. Yes, it is." And I said, "Mr. Gaines, it is an honor." I'm still holding the bottle of booze. "It is an honor to serve you. I've been a fan for my entire life." And he says, "Well, thank you." I said, "May I shake your hand?" He says, "Yes." We shook hands. And then I said, "That'll be," and I told him the price of the bottle, and he put down the exact change. He already had it ready. He put it on the counter. This cat is a pro. So I went over to my cash register drawer. Remember, we each had our own little drawer, and I got the receipt and everything. Came over, bagged up the dry sack, and I gave it to him. And I said, "Once again, sir, thank you for everything." And he said, "Thank you," and off he went. And poof, he was gone. And so I ran over to the front door to see where he went, and he got into the back of a big black limousine. And I saw when they opened the door who was in the back seat. The Beard. Mad Magazine devotees will know who I'm talking about when I say the Beard. His buddy, Lenny Brenner, who looked a little bit like Lenin, right? And so the Beard, Lenin, and Bill Gaines, Karl Marx got in the limousine, and Lenin and Karl Marx got in a big black limousine and rode away down Madison Avenue. And that's not something that you see absolutely every day. So now it's a little bit later. This is the end of April. And you'll never guess what I heard from Suzanne. Yes, yay! And I'm so excited to hear from her. And she says, "Sit tight." And I'm like, "Oh." She says, "Yes, we haven't heard anything either way. Don't worry. We're not trying to mess with your head or anything like that. But Gary's got a lot of stuff to do, and he hasn't let anybody know either way. You know, if it was up to me, you'd be in. And I think that he feels the same way. But there's just a lot of work to do before he can put the word out. So, sit tight." And I said, "I will use that, and I will do my best to not drive myself insane." So there we go. We had that bit of news. I could take a little bit of a sigh and not obsess so much and not dwell on my depression so much. So it was a little abatement of the depression for a while. All right, now it's May, and you'll never guess who came into the store. Roscoe Lee Brown, distinguished African-American actor who since the 60s had always fought to not play traditional or stereotypical black roles. Right. And so he was doing a lot of Shakespeare and working his way through the major canon of classic literature, classic theater. And he was in August Wilson's original production of Joe Turner's Come and Gone. Uh, uh, so so here he is. Oh, and you heard his beautiful, resonant voice narrating the lovely movie Babe, and also the sequel Babe, Pig in the City. Yes, he narrated those with his luscious, rich, sumptuous voice. Anyhow, he walks in the store, and I already know him not from just from his movie career, but because he grew up in the same town, Woodbury, New Jersey, a small suburb of Philadelphia in South Jersey. He grew up in the same town as my parents. And my dad went to high school, went to Woodbury High School. He went to Woodbury High School with my father, Roscoe Lee Brown, and my dad went to high school together. So, and they ran track together, ran track and field. My dad ran track and also pole vaulting. So anyhow, Mr. Brown comes into the wine store, and he comes over to my counter where I'm standing, and there is a nice comfy leather chair there for people to sit if they want to sit down when they're making their order, and he has a seat in the comfy leather bar stool. and he wants to order a couple of cases of mixed red and mixed white wine. So I've been in the liquor industry now for a little while, and I can actually make some educated recommendations. Now he has already some booze and wine in mind that he wants to order, but I recommend a couple of things, a couple of whites that I like, the Fontana Candida, and I of course am always pushing the red Chateau Talbot 1975. Fantastic, affordable vintage wine. Yes, so we have a nice time putting the order together, and I actually made him laugh, chuckle a couple of times just when we were bantering over the wine order. And as we're finishing up, a couple of starstruck young ladies in their early 20s come up, grinning from ear to ear, and you can tell they're just the cutest things. They're starstruck. And they come up and they say, "Excuse us, Mr. Brown, we don't mean to interrupt, but we saw you over here and we wanted to tell you that we love your work and we're just so excited to see you." And he turned to them and he was so gracious. He was just delightful. He says, "Well, my dears," he says, "I really appreciate that and thank you so very much." And he said, one of them said, "We're not going to ask for your autograph or anything." And he said, "Well, my dears, I really appreciate that. Thank you for that so much." And the other one said, "We were just hoping we could shake your hand and we just want to tell you that we love your work." And he offered his hand. And he said, "Yes, my dears, it's an honor to meet you too," he says. "And I'm so glad that you came over to say hello. And thank you. And you have a wonderful day in New York City." And they said, "Thank you. You have a wonderful day too." And off they went. It was very sweet. They were very charming. So he turned to me and he's got a little smile on. And I said, "Mr. Brown, if I may." And he said, "Yes." I said, "Both of my parents born and raised in Woodbury, New Jersey." And he said, "Really?" His face opened up with this huge smile. And I says, "Absolutely." I said, "My they both went to Woodbury High School, and you ran track and field?" He said, "Yes, I did." I said, "My father ran track with you. His name is Harry Wetzel." And he said, "I remember your father." I said, "Really? Well, that is so kind of you." He says, "Absolutely. You give your parents my warmest regards," he said. "I absolutely shall." I said, "May I shake your hand?" He says, "Absolutely." We shook hands, and I said, "It's just like talking to somebody from home. It's so nice to meet you, sir, and such an honor. And my parents will be thrilled to hear from you." And he says, "Yes, well, thank you very much. And you have a wonderful day. It was so nice talking to you." And poof, like that, he was gone. So, I got home that night and I immediately called my folks and I gave them Roscoe Lee Brown's warmest regards. I said, "I need both of you on an extension. I got good news. It's not bad news, but I don't want to have to tell the story twice." And so I got on and I told him that Roscoe Lee Brown came in and my dad said, I ran track with him." And I said, "I know, I told him that." And he said, "I remember your father." And Dad said, "He did?" I said, "Yes." He says, "Well, isn't that nice?" And he said, "Yes, give your parents my warmest regards." So Patricia, my mother, said, "Well, isn't that nice?" So that was our conversation, and we talked about some other stuff like that. All right, now I'm back at work. It's early May, and there are 3 new employees. And I'll tell you about that adventure next time. Thank you so much for coming, and I always do, I look forward to talking to you and seeing you next time. All right.